Hi there, I'm Kyle Laturnus, the Pioneer rep from Landis, Saskatchewan, and this is the Pioneer Made to Grow podcast.
This is the Pioneer Made to Grow podcast. I'm Andrew Campbell, and we've got a really interesting show for you today that takes us out of our usual conversations that center around corn, soybeans, or wheat, and look towards Western Canada to learn about the successes of the 2022 growing season in Saskatchewan, as well as learn about the work that's being done to continually improve the canola crop on the prairies. To do that, we've got two great voices on this subject. Jenna Gregoire is the area agronomist for Pioneer, covering the northern parts of Saskatchewan. And Kyle Laturnus is a Pioneer rep and a farmer who's based in the Landis area. Jenna and Greg, thanks so much for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem, Andrew.
So, Kyle, I'm going to start with you. I really am, first of all, just curious, now that we're kind of, post-harvest for you, how was 2022 as a growing season?
In all honesty, a little bit of a roller coaster. Kind of coming off last year's drought. We weren't really sure where we were going to be sitting come spring. And initially, it kind of started off pretty dry as well. We're kind of generally starting to get worried about where we were going to be sitting. And then we did get kind of some rainfall in there towards the end of May. Beginning of June, that really kind of turned things around and had us pointed in the right direction. And then kind of towards the end of summer, kind of right when we were getting close to deciding what we were going to do at harvest, it kind of got quite hot and quite dry. And so we kind of finished out in kind of the average area. And it's, as we kind of do our hindsight, it's probably was going to be average all the way along, but when you were comparing it to what was there last year, guys were feeling pretty good for a good stretch of time, like here we go, and then kind of finished off maybe a little bit less than what guys were hoping for, but when you compare it to last year, guys were pretty happy with what they walked away with, so it's nice to have mostly full bins again.
Well, as you say, especially compared to a year like 2021, average probably feels pretty good. So now, Jenna, is that kind of, you're covering a wider area. Is that pretty much the case for your whole territory, or was it variable across it?
My area was kind of a mixed bag. I guess overall, yeah, we could say it was average, but some chunk of my area was wet, really wet. Some chunk was going into year 4 of drought. So it was extremely dry and hot. And then some chunk, like Kyle would said there, was fairly average, where we started off a little dry, but then we got moisture, and overall things averaged out. So it just kind of depended where you were in my area. It was kind of a really mixed bag. But overall, though, with the exception of the southern part of my area, I would say guys were definitely happier this year, though, than what they were the previous year. So it was kind of nice to deal with a little bit too much water in some areas as opposed to not enough water like last year.
Well, that does just speak to the challenges that we all do. I mean, you get to the point where you're choosing hybrids, where you're, then going even into seed, not really knowing what to expect, whether you're going to face a drought, whether you're going to face it wet, what you're going to do. Jenna, as growers are starting to think about what type of seed selection they're going to go into 2023 with, given the last couple of years of that, as you say, that enormous variability, what kind of challenges do you think growers need to address when they are starting to pick hybrids?
Well, I think because there is so much variability, and of course Mother Nature can really throw some curveballs in, I think the biggest thing is not putting all of our eggs in one basket, like going with a multi-hybrid approach with multiple different benefits that it brings to the table, I think is now more important than ever. Depending on what happens in a year, whether it's an early frost or a late frost, because there's so much variability, I think that it's so important to bring multiple products onto that farmer's production, because it's you never know what you're going to get, right?
Then Kyle, that is the real challenge, is you never know what you're going to get. Give me an idea in terms of, the area that you're in Saskatchewan. What are some of the big challenges that growers are most concerned about, particularly when it comes to disease?
Well, I mean, obviously, depending on where you are, like sclerotinia can certainly be an issue for some guys who deal with it kind of year after year, and for others, they kind of ask you what is that, and so you really kind of have to get down to the nitty gritty with the guys that you're working with or the operations that you're working with to see what they want. And we're kind of sitting in a pretty good position working with Pioneer, because we do have a pretty full cupboard where, we can really fine tune what they're looking for and match that into what we have, right? So we're not saying here's what we have, it'll work everywhere. It's here's what's going to work for you, and that might look different for you, and that might look different for you. So that's kind of, I'm pretty grateful to be able to have a product list that we do have where we can match it up for exactly what they're looking for.
Over your territory, what are some of the other pressures that a grower's really got to think about when they are starting to pick seeds?
Well, Clubroot is kind of that swear word that is definitely coming to mind for guys where we are now, for operations. I know for a long time, it was something that our operations didn't really feel or didn't know if they had to worry about it or not. But again, with the lineup and the work that Pioneer's done, incorporating Clubroot resistance into our products, we kind of have a second to none options list for those guys, and to really give them a peace of mind in terms of what they have to choose from to make sure we're looking after their land, not only now but for future options too, right? And I think that's kind of, rest assured, maybe it's something that they don't have to worry about, but we're giving them the options so that they don't have nightmares that some other areas might have.
Jenna, I like the way Kyle phrased that. It's the swear word, Clubroot. In terms of, those that have faced the pressure of it, how big of a problem does it become?
It's a really big problem. And it really depends where you are. Like in that Edmonton, Alberta corridor, we kind of call that ground zero for Clubroot. And of course, they were the first ones to really face it. And now they're facing what's called a race shift in Clubroot as well. So typical or historical Clubroot genetics that they would have grown, now there's been a race shift in Clubroot. So now they need to switch. But what Kyle was talking about with our genetics, though, I would say that Pioneer Hybrid really does have second to none breeding team when it comes to Clubroot. And we have hybrids now that do have that new source of Clubroot protection in there. So we do have an option for customers who can no longer grow the traditional Clubroot resistant hybrids. So that part's really good. For our area, though, we can still go with the traditional Clubroot resistant hybrids. So our options are very wide, but it's great to know that our breeding team is really second to none, and they've bred to that next level of expectations when it comes to Clubroot resistance built into the hybrids. So it feels really good to be on that side of the fence and work with a company like Pioneer Hybrid for that.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. Now, in terms of, kind of using those, is it a case of, still looking at different varieties, even if it hasn't necessarily been an issue, or is it just, maybe let's talk to the Pioneer rep for whatever area it is, just to find out whether this is something you need to think about?
Well, when it comes to Clubroot, we want to keep that spore load low. So even if Clubroot isn't an issue on their farm, and let's be realistic, a lot of farmers don't actually test for Clubroot on their farm. It's kind of one of those things where neighbor X thinks that neighbor Y has it, and neighbor Y thinks that neighbor X has it, but nobody's actually tested for it. So the amount of Clubroot that's probably out there is very high, but that's one nice thing with our lineup of seed is that no matter what you're purchasing, there's really only very few hybrids that don't have the Clubroot genetics built right into it. So for our area, it's kind of something that we take away that worry of whether or not they can grow their hybrid in Saskatchewan, because they can, no matter what they're choosing, with the exception of a couple. It's built right in there, and it's we're kind of taking away that worry for farmers, so they don't have to worry about if they're getting protection with our product, because it's naturally built right in for them.
Now, Kyle, when we do talk about traits, I want to shift to some, kind of herbicide-traded varieties here and hybrids. Give me an idea. In your area, are there concerns, or what are the concerns that you hear from growers when they're choosing, what kind of herbicide trait to go with?
I think, again, that really depends on the farm that you're on, based on what they're looking for. I would say that there's probably greater than 50% that would like an option that doesn't include glyphosate in their canola selection, because guys are using it for their fall burn and their spring burn and their post burn in some instances, and the way they want to run their farms is to have a different option. Whereas other operations really like the option of keeping it simple and going with what they got, and they're tank mixing other products when they're doing their fall and pre-seed burn-offs. And then you have the other option who is using Clearfield system of canola, because that's what fits best with their acres. So again, it's kind of when you kind of take a step back and see what you have to offer your customers, and you can give them a choice of what really works best on their farm for what they want. It's a pretty good position to be in, to really find out what works best for them or what they're thinking about, and then come with a list of hybrids that fits for them.
Now, is it a case we've seen in other parts of the country that, especially as a company comes out with more and more options for what kind of traits, as you mentioned, whether it's, glyphosate, whether it's Clearfield, whether it's Enlist, whatever it happens to be, is it a case of at what point do growers start thinking about mixing those up? Or is it a case of, kind of the same, tried and true is the best option? Jenna, why don't I start with you?
I think that sometimes it can get overwhelming for producers, when companies are coming out with new hybrids and your lineup gets bigger. But Pioneer Hybrid seems to do an extremely good job of not coming out with a hybrid unless it brings something new and exciting to the table, or there's a need or a fit in the lineup. So I think for producers, there's some that definitely will want that tried and true hybrid that's done the best for them on their farm year over year over year. But reps like Kyle do a absolutely phenomenal job of doing plots that showcase all the different attributes of what our lineup has to offer. So when somebody says, hey, I'm looking for a early maturity hybrid, Kyle has that information in order to come with them. Or if they're looking for the highest yielder, he has all those data points in order to come to them and tell them what was the highest yielder last year. And it's kind of interesting that, what seems to be the highest yielder year over year for one farmer isn't necessarily the highest yielder year over year for the next farmer, which is why that multiple hybrid approach that we're trying to promote with producers is so important, so that we kind of can cover all bases that they're looking for.
Now, I do want to come back to that, kind of in terms of, looking ahead to the next, not just even the 2023 growing season, but beyond. But there's one other point that I do want to mention, and that comes around the, seed applied technologies, mainly because it's actually a topic that's come up on this show many times over, just about the results that can come from that. Certainly, I think one of the big things that a lot of growers are finding, and this actually came up just in the last episode, with Dave Harwood, was the earlier we can get this seed in the ground, the better chance it has, to return, obviously a profitable crop at the end of the year. The challenge just being, how long can it, sit in the soil? Both of you, I'd like both of you to answer this. Maybe Jenny, you can start. In terms of seed applied technologies that are available, how important is it for a grower to determine, what needs to go on the seed so that they can be ready as early as, the soil will let them get into seed?
Yeah, I mean, seed treatments are so important. In Saskatchewan, we're a little bit different than what the eastern portion of Canada would be, whereas our seeding time frame is fairly small. Where we sometimes, May 5th, we have snow on the ground, and sometimes April 20th, guys could be seeding. So it's really a mixed bag. But when we come out with these new seed applied technologies, it shows them that they're working to better equip that seed for all the different things that could come at us. So with this new seed applied technology, they're seeing things like better control of seedling disease and better blackleg control, things like that with this new technology. So it just gives guys that peace of mind that if they do end up seeding a little bit earlier, that there's that protection on it for that whole growing season, to get it out of the ground. Canola is pretty wimpy until it gets to about that 3-4 leaf stage. So the more things that we can do to help it get out of the ground and get established, I think is just setting farmers up for success at that early stage, and which is so important.
Kyle, what are you hearing from growers? Like, how important is it, or what are they looking for when it comes to that seed applied technology?
I definitely kind of second what Jenna had mentioned there in regards to having kind of a complete package that's going to check off as many boxes as we can to give canola the best chance out of the gate, right? For a lot of operations, those first few weeks of watching their canola come up and go, like it can be agonizing in some instances because it always seems to take forever, even though that's just the way it goes, right? And once it gets going, then away we go. But it's hard not to have a little bit of stress and anxiety when you're watching these very, very small seeds come out of the ground and start going. And it's like Jenna said, we do have a small window, and sometimes it's maybe not as beneficial as we would like it to be to stick that seed in the ground earlier than it classically should be, sort of thing, right? It just seems to have the best chance of success if we get it in the ground between these dates and these dates, and even though it might be uncomfortable for the first couple of weeks to watch it go, it's never failed us yet. So it's kind of one of those where it's like the more that we can give it to give it a better chance to get out of the ground and get going, the better it is for everybody.
What a great segue, Kyle, when you talk about it's never failed us yet. And that's really, what a lot of this conversation comes down to is that, obviously Mother Nature is going to determine, what that weather is going to look like for the growing season. And the markets are going to be, what they are. But if we set those two pieces kind of, aside as somewhat out of our control as growers, what do you think the keys are in ensuring that, canola remains a sustainable crop to grow, not just, for 2023, but, for the next 5, 10, plus years down the road?
I think it's the primary thing would just be like a stable platform that you kind of know what you're getting, right? And I think if you draw back to the plots that we do on a regular basis, every year brings you different data because every year is different, and being able to go back 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years to see what different varieties have done based on different conditions that it's presented with, you can come with a really good set of data and information for your customers when you're suggesting a variety. I mean, when you're the one that's suggesting a variety or varieties for them to grow with, like at the end of the day, you're putting yourself out there, right? But you're coming from a position where data is giving you the information with which to make a recommendation, and they're coming to you because they trust you, because they're seeing us seeding at the same time, putting the product in the ground that we're selling to them too, right? And I think that that's a pretty powerful place to come from, because, I'm putting the same thing in the ground that I'm trying to get on your farm,
No, it makes total sense. And Jenna, kind of same question for you is, in terms of when we think about, what's in a grower's control, what's going to make sure that canola remains sustainable for the next decade plus?
Well, I think part of it is just we need to make sure that our products keep evolving so that they are a profitable crop for our producers. So, with these new things, new seed applied technologies, Optimum Glide that we're going to be bringing out here soon, different traits like Clubroot and Sclero package, we need to make sure that we're making things as easy as possible for customers to turn a profit. So as long as we're continuing to evolve with our products, and we can continue to keep it as a profitable crop on the farm there, I think that definitely helps, lengthen the life cycle of canola when a customer is thinking, what do they want to plant for their acres? We want canola to be top of mind because we want, in the end, it's a business. We want them to make as much money as possible. And by advancing these products and bringing more to the plate for them, I think that that's probably one of the best ways that Pioneer Hybrid can do that.
Sounds like it. Well, Jenna, Kyle, thanks very much for walking us through, not only, what things looked like in Saskatchewan for 2022, but also for, how to find that profitability and success, through 2023 and beyond. So, Kyle, Jenna, thanks for joining the podcast.
Thank you very much
again.
Next time, our conversation turns to an issue we've all heard about, we've all felt at one time or another. It's the conversation about maintaining strong mental health as well as where to turn when you need to talk to someone. That's next time on the Pioneer Made to Grow podcast. On behalf of myself and the entire team working behind the scenes on this, thanks so much for listening. Don't forget, you can always get in touch on Twitter at Pioneer Seeds CA or my personal handle, Fresh Air Farmer. And for more information or advice, talk to your local Pioneer rep or visit pioneer.com/Canada.